Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani here. Today's video is going to be on nausea. Why do I feel nauseous? What are the top 5 reasons why that nausea is there? What does that mean? Before we dive in, please smash that like button. Really helps the search algorithm. Put your comments down below. Let me know what you've done in regards to some of the topics on this video. What you've done that have helped work for you, whether it's nausea or any other issues. What's worked? Let me know. Really curious to get some feedback live here. So why are you nauseous, right? So typically nausea is going to be either some type of digestive inflammatory imbalance, and that's part of the reason why you're nauseous. The other component could be your sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive as well. When your sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive, that can be another driving factor of nausea as well. Also, chronic stress, chronic inflammation can also drive that sympathetic nervous system as well. There's other reasons like, pregnancy and high levels of HCG that can be more on the pregnancy side. If you take a lot of pills on an empty stomach, something like that can also create a stressor in your body. So we got to look at the root underlying reasons why. So first thing out of the gate, when you're nauseous, your body does not want to be eating or digesting food. So typically your appetite goes down. So if you're sick, you have a cold, there's going to be a lot of times nausea associated with that. If you eat, you have no appetite. Part of the reason why is because your body is trying to allocate all resources to healing and recovering from whatever that stressor is versus going and digesting food. Food digestion can be the stressor on the body. So 30%, 40% of energy for protein, for instance, goes into the digestive process. So if you're under a lot of stress or you're sick, your body will sometimes say, hey, shut down the appetite and let's work on getting this thing under control with the immune response. Now, again, this is why things like chicken soup are always great when you're sick. Think about why. Because when you're nauseous, it's hard to digest and break down food, and also you're not hungry. So it's easier to do something more liquid where a lot of those nutrients are kind of broken down in the broth, in that bone broth. That's part of the reason why you're sick. They say do chicken soup. I think usually the chicken noodle, but we keep the noodle out, right? The whole idea is liquid, there's electrolytes, there's nutrients, there's amino acids. You got to basically get amino acids in there to kind of make those good antibodies. The antibodies are typically protein based. Adding in hydrochloric acid can be a big fix because when you're stressed, sometimes some of that stressor can deplete enzyme and acid levels. And so if we're stressed and we're nauseous because we don't have enough stomach acid or enzymes, that can significantly reduce nausea and improve digestion. So one of the easiest things is get your enzyme and acid levels supported. You can start with some apple cider vinegar. You can move up to some betaine HCl and some enzymes. These are a good first step because if your indigestion is driving the nausea, the first thing is, like I mentioned in the first step, make your food easier to digest, easier to break down, avoid a lot of raw stuff, cook it, steam it, saute it, soup, stew. But then you can also just try adding in some enzymes and acids. Third, we can also add in ginger. Ginger is a natural anti-nausea compound. Most of the medical nausea compounds, whether it's Dramamine or these different antihistamines, whether it's a Benadryl or some kind of an antihistamine, H1, H2 blocker medication, they are going to help with some of the nausea, right? But they're not going to fix the underlying issue. Plus, they have side effects of fatigue and brain fog. So not the best to take during the day. Much better off using ginger. Again, ginger is going to have some anti-inflammatory mechanism. So if it's inflammation in the tummy or the gut or the intestine, it's going to calm down that inflammation. Two, it's a prokinetic. So if you have a lot of food just sitting in your stomach and it's just sitting there like you have a rock or a brick in your stomach, it's going to help with the digestion. It's a natural bitter. It's going to get your enzymes and acids kind of stimulated, and it's going to help release that good food in your stomach. It's going to help stimulate that migrating motor complex so we can move that food along our digestive tract. That's 3. 4, you could have bigger issues going on. I had a patient just on the phone here a minute ago who had C. diff, and C. diff was driving up that nausea. And so, we're doing ginger. We may even do some specific probiotics like Saccharomyces boulardii and like ProBioFlora or SacroFlora to kind of help calm the gut down, because probiotics can be very anti-inflammatory. So if we have an acute issue, sometimes probiotics can help get you out of a nausea episode, especially if there's C. diff or other bacteria. Sometimes some Saccharomyces boulardii and some Bifidobacter and Lactobacillus can be very, very soothing and really help support kind of your body's ability to heal. Next, I would say is inadequate bile support. So especially if we see fat, in the indigestion of fat or not being able to break down fat adequately, sometimes not having good bile flow or gallbladder function can drive nausea. Bile is really important. It helps break down fat. So if your stools are floating or more clay colored or blonde colored, right, these are a sign that you're not breaking down fat adequately. So one of the first things we would look at is adding in some bile salts as well. This gives us a good support and ability to break down the fat. Plus, bile is also a natural antimicrobial. It has a slightly acidic, and it can help knock down some of the bugs in the intestinal tract. So I think the big things out of the gate would be foods, inflammatory foods, inadequate levels of enzymes and acids. And again, that's going to be driven by your sympathetic nervous system kind of being in overdrive a bit. Also, we talked about inadequate bile flow, inadequate bile production, and then also different infections, whether it's C. diff or bacteria, E. coli. These could all be driving your issue. And sometimes just knocking down the bugs can help. We may even want to throw in like my GI Clear 4. I got sick in Boston a couple of years back, and I was incredibly nauseous, and my GI Clear 4 pulled me out of it in a day or so. But you got to look at the situation. Again, if it's more acute, you can come in there with killing out of the gate. If it's more chronic, you got to look at what the underlying issue is and kind of go through, the food's an issue. Am I digesting well? It's my sympathetic nervous system a problem. Obviously, make sure you rule out pregnancy. That's an HCG issue, and ginger can help with that, and better digestion and also can help. Food allergens. Is there any bugs going on there? Should I add in some probiotics and or some Saccharomyces? These are some good thinking process to kind of work through what the best solution would be. So I hope that helps. Hope that makes sense. It kind of shows you my thinking and kind of how I would differentially diagnose and look at what the best strategic solution is for a corrective action. So hope this makes sense. If you guys want to reach out to myself or colleagues like myself, I have staff here that will help you. Click down below. You'll be able to see a link there, and you can reach out with me directly. I'm available worldwide. Let me hit a couple questions here for y'all. Okay, question, put it on the screen. How would you take HCl or ACV and enzymes with regards to your meal, before, middle, or after? I typically recommend just taking everything in the middle. By the middle, it doesn't mean like exactly in the middle. Couple of bites of food first. I like to have a little bit of a food coating the stomach. And again, if you're sensitive, this matters more because that gut lining, if there's gastritis or if it's a lot of inflammation, that enzyme or that acid compound is going to sit and hit that bottom of your gastric mucosa and sometimes create inflammation. And so depending on how sensitive you are, that's a good kind of rule of thumb, is have a little bit of food in there first. Top 25% of the way through your meal is a pretty good rule of thumb. Now, regarding ACV, you could do it right before meal, like put in an ounce or two of water, just shoot it down and then start eating right away. That's a good kind of rule of thumb. If it hurts your gut, then you can also do that somewhat in the middle of the meal as well. Enzymes, you tend to have flexibility. Again, I deal with a lot of patients that have a lot of gut irritation. So I tend to err on the side of taking it in the middle of the meal. So there's a little bit of food to buffer the gut lining. If you're not sensitive, you could always take it right before meal. Enzymes tend to be a lot more forgiving. You could do it before meal. Again, if you're on the fence, I typically always recommend just with a little bit of food because it's going to tend to agree a lot better. So good questions there. I try to make recommendations for my patients. I deal with a lot of chronically sick patients of what's going to have the least likely chance to kind of blow back and create side effects or create problems. I try to make my recommendations based on what's going to give me the best chance of success out of the gate. And if for some reason you have more latitude with your health being healthier, then I would say you could take it before food and just see how you do. As long as your gut's not inflamed, you're not irritated. HCl with food is better. Enzymes, you could do it before meal. I just tend to make my recommendations right in the middle of the meal or so. So good questions here, guys. Hope that helps. If you want to reach out, put a link down below where you can reach out and schedule with myself and my colleagues worldwide. All right, guys, have an awesome day. Take care.